Let's have a look at the trends affecting social entrepreneurship. Are the environmental factors in favour of it, supporting it, or not? IBISWorld published a report on the charities and not-for-profit organisation sector in Australia in 2014 and found that the sector was growing, even though it had been growing faster, that the number of enterprises was increasing. In fact, you'll see that's quite a dramatic increase. And it employed a lot of people. The wage bill across the sector is 1.1 billion. So that's paying for a lot of people to make a living. Here are some of the causes that are supported by the not-for-profit sector in Australia. So physically disadvantaged people, which probably includes mental illness. One you might think of is economic development and foreign aid. Sports and cultural organisations, so the arts, music, that sort of thing, are part of the not-for-profit sector. Political, religious and social organisations. Religious you might think of, and social, but political parties also get not-for-profit status, so they would be included there. Trauma victims, quite big. So basically it's quite a wide-ranging sector addressing a number of social problems, as you'd expect. Some of the common themes that were picked up in the report: there is more government outsourcing of alleviating of social problems. So in particular, charities are doing a lot of the work that was previously done by the traditional welfare state. In particular, finding work for the long-term unemployed has been widely outsourced to not-for-profit organisations, and many of the religious organisations, such as Mission Australia, have taken that on in quite a big way. There's more competition across the sector and more funding pressure in the sector. What that means is that as the number of organisations in the sector grow, basically they're fighting for the same funds. So competition, although these organisations are all seeking to improve society, the sad thing is that they're often going to the same sources of funding, such as governments and corporate philanthropy and individual philanthropy. Philanthropy being giving of money without the expectation of return. There are higher public expectations. There's more focus on governance, which means doing things in a professional, ethical and appropriate way. And that's probably driven partly by the fact that they're carrying out work on behalf of the government. And therefore there's a tendency to become more professional in the sector. And in many cases, the bigger not-for-profit organisations are looking to the business sector for members of their board or even employees. In short, there's more social entrepreneurship needed. So what does this mean for social entrepreneurship? Well, there's a broader range of issues addressed. It's fragmented, so there are tiny charities to very large enterprises. But even though there are large enterprises, it's not that heavily dominated by any one organisation, and that can be a good environment for entrepreneurs to enter. So there's lots of ways you could be a social entrepreneur. You can do a lean startup approach. You'll often see that there are sites to promote a cause, so to raise money for a particular project, for example. You could start a new social enterprise, and you've seen how successful some of those can be. We've looked at Thank You Water, for example. You could start a new charity. Perhaps there's a cause that's neglected, that you think deserves more attention. Social media is a great way to raise awareness for it, and then actually to set up an ongoing organisation rather than just a one-off project. You could be a corporate social entrepreneur. You could actually lead or be in the top management area of an existing social enterprise, such as one of the charities. For example, the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence had created an innovation manager position. Or you could be a social entrepreneur in a for-profit company. such as working in the corporate social responsibility area of a bank, for example, or a legal firm. Any business that is serious about enhancing its social responsibility impact. Why would businesses be interested in corporate social responsibility? Well, they're being driven towards it from a number of directions. One of them, starting at the top right, is their customers. Customers are starting to be aware of the impact of their buying choices. So if they have an option, they would prefer to buy from a responsible company, and that gives that company a competitive advantage. And we can see how Thank You Water took advantage of that in demonstrating that if they only had to pay the same price as any other bottle of water, customers would mostly prefer to choose the one that was making a social contribution. Then you've got employees. Employees, especially younger employees, the likes of you, are more demanding of their employers. They actually want to work for an organisation that behaves in an ethical way and contributes positively to society and the environment, and certainly does no harm. So they're looking for an ethical culture. NGOs are, which what we're talking about here, if you like, the established organisations in the area, they are powerful lobby groups. So, for example, I can't remember which NGO it was, but Nike came under attack for using sweatshop labour, and it really did damage their sales. People opted for other brands instead. So reputational risk management is very important. And finally, there's the investors. There is a growing interest in socially responsible investment. There are separate share indices for ethical companies. They've got different names in different countries, and the evidence shows that they perform at least as well as the traditional business sector, and in some cases better. The thing about corporate social responsibility, though, is that there's a certain amount of doubt about whether it's real. So, is it just corporate spin? Is it just window dressing? Is it just a company wanting to make themselves look good in society? There's a quote in this newspaper article here from the BHP chief. Companies should think of every dollar they spend in the supply chain as a potential tool for social good. So, let's take the example of retail clothing. Most clothing is made outside of Australia. So, what conditions are the people making those garments working in? Are they exploited? What materials are they made out of? If it's cotton, is it grown in a way that's environmentally friendly? Now, these become complicated questions, but at the same time, they actually have a direct impact on the social and environmental and ecological environment. Now, things for us to think about. You're probably not thinking about superannuation yet, but once you get a job in Australia, you will automatically get superannuation. So where is it invested? There are actually firms that specialise in ethical investment. If you don't like tobacco, if you don't like mining, if you don't like banks, are you comfortable about your superannuation dollars being invested with those organisations? Maybe it's something you haven't thought about. What are your employers' CSR practices? That's a typo, it should be employers. So when you're working for a business, do they have any corporate social responsibility initiatives? And if they don't, well, maybe you could suggest some. It might be a way of showing your initiative within the organisation. The challenge of corporate social responsibility and for social entrepreneurship in general is that people have higher expectations. So if you claim to be socially and ethically and environmentally responsible, then you have to live up to it. Customers are likely to be people who care about the social cause or the environmental cause that you're promoting, and therefore they're going to pay attention to what you do. And if you are saying that you are environmentally conscious, but you are actually doing things that damage the environment, you will lose those customers very, very quickly and your reputation will be trashed. So you have to walk the talk. You have to do what you say you will do. And they also start to look at all aspects of your operation. So, for example, if you're providing solar lights to the developing world, brilliant. It helps to save the environment, but are they being made by exploited workers? The sanitation products for the developing world, are they environmentally friendly? So when you contribute to one social problem, unfortunately, and perhaps unfairly, customers, stakeholders start to expect you to contribute to a wider range of social problems. So, in other words, when you publicly set standards, be prepared to live up to them. At the same time, these people are a discerning public, so they are educated enough to know that it's difficult. The most important thing is to be prepared to explain and defend your practices, because if you don't explain and you don't defend or you just deny, then people will lose trust in your brand. So it can give you competitive advantage, but it can be easily be lost. So really, the key message is you've got to care about it. You've got to be serious about it. So takeaways. The environment for social entrepreneurship at the moment is positive. There are growing social problems in need of solutions. Governments are increasingly supporting external providers to provide those solutions. So there's a need for startup social entrepreneurs to create new organisations or develop existing ones. The need for social entrepreneurs is increasing, and partly driven by corporate social responsibility. But social entrepreneurship also involves being held to higher standards. So it's a double-edged sword. It's a positive and a big positive, but it's also a challenge. So be prepared, but don't shy away from it because it can be extremely rewarding.